I've always had trouble sleeping. God, it started back in college. Stress, they said. But it followed me, haunted me well into adulthood. By 32, I'd tried everything. Pills, meditation, white noise machines, blackout curtains. Nothing worked. So when I stumbled across this online forum discussing alternative treatments for chronic insomnia, I was just desperate enough to try anything. Anything. That's how I found Dr. Emerson's sleep clinic. The website was simple, almost too simple. Just this plain white background with black text listing the address, phone number, and a single testimonial. I slept for the first time in 15 years. Thank you. No photos, no credentials, no explanation of methods, but the reviews on the forum were glowing, almost reverent. I called the number and a woman with this flat, monotone voice answered. She didn't identify the business, just asked my name and what I was calling about. I can't sleep, I said, feeling ridiculous stating something so obvious. I saw your clinic mentioned online. There was this long pause. So long I thought the call had dropped. We have an opening tomorrow at midnight, she finally said, her voice emotionless. The doctor only sees patients after hours. I hesitated. Midnight? For a medical appointment? But then again, we were dealing with sleep disorders. Maybe there was some twisted logic to it. That's fine, I said. Do I need to bring anything? Just yourself, she replied. And understand that once you begin treatment, you must see it through to completion. There are no refunds. I agreed, and she gave me the address. It wasn't in a medical complex as I'd expected, but in this old Victorian house on the edge of town, in a neighborhood I rarely visited. I hung up and immediately searched for information about Dr. Emerson online, but found nothing. No medical license, no social media, not even a LinkedIn profile. In retrospect, that should have been my first warning. My first chance to walk away. The next night I drove through rain-slicked streets to the address. The house. It loomed against the night sky, all steep gables and narrow windows. A single light burned in an upstairs window. The porch light flickered, on, off, on, as I approached. And for a moment, God, I considered turning back. But then I thought of another sleepless night stretching ahead of me. Endless and empty. And I pressed forward. The door opened before I could knock. The woman who stood there matched her voice. Flat, unremarkable, forgettable. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and she wore this high-necked black dress that seemed from another era. She didn't introduce herself, just stepped back to let me in. Doctor, Emerson is waiting in the consultation room, she said, leading me through a hallway lined with old photographs. I tried to look at them as we passed, but they seemed oddly blurred, as if the subjects had moved during exposure. The consultation room was small but immaculate. Dark wood paneling covered the walls and heavy curtains blocked the windows. A desk dominated the space, behind which sat a tall, thin man with silver hair. He wore round spectacles that reflected the light, obscuring his eyes completely. Mr. Wells, he said, his voice surprisingly warm. Please sit. I settled into the chair across from him, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. No clock ticking, no rain against the windows, no creaking floorboards. Just silence. Thick and absolute, like being underwater. You can't sleep, he said. It wasn't a question. No, I confirmed, my voice barely audible. Not for years now. He nodded, as if this was exactly what he expected to hear. And conventional treatments have failed you. All of them, I said, hearing the desperation in my own voice. Because conventional medicine doesn't understand the true nature of sleep. He leaned forward, and for the first time I could see his eyes behind those glasses. Dark. So dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Sleep isn't just a physical state, Mr. Wells. It's a place, a realm separate from our waking world. And some people have difficulty crossing over. I shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the evidence-based approach I'd hoped for. I'm not sure I understand, I said, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. You will? He opened a drawer and removed a small wooden box. My treatment is unconventional, but effective. 100% effective. But it comes with certain conditions. What kind of conditions? My mouth went dry. The treatment requires a guide. Something to lead you into sleep and watch over you while you're there. He opened the box. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was what looked like a simple black stone, about the size of a golf ball. This will be your guide. I peered at it. The stone wasn't quite black, I realized, but a dark, shifting gray like smoke trapped in glass. What is it? It's called an umbra stone. Think of it as a kind of anchor for your consciousness. He didn't offer to let me hold it. The procedure is simple. You'll take this home, place it on your nightstand before bed. When you lie down, put your hand on it and say, "I invite you to guide me." That's all. I frowned. That doesn't sound very medical. I never claimed to practice conventional medicine, Mr. Wells. I offer results. He closed the box with a snap that made me jump. The fee is $5,000, cash only. I balked at the price, but then calculated how much I'd already spent on failed treatments over the years. And if it doesn't work, it will work. His confidence was absolute. But there are rules you must follow. First, the stone must remain by your bed at all times. Do not move it, even to clean. Second, the invitation must be spoken aloud each night, exactly as I've instructed. Third, and most important, you must never, under any circumstances, look at your shadow while using the stone. My shadow? I repeated, confused. Your shadow won't be entirely your own during treatment, he said matter-of-factly. If you look at it directly, you'll break the connection, and the consequences could be severe. Warning bells were screaming in my head now. This sounded less like medicine and more like superstition. But then Dr. Emerson said something that stopped my objections cold. You've felt it already, haven't you? The presence in your room at night, the weight on your chest, the sense that something is watching you from the corner, waiting for you to finally close your eyes. A chill ran through me, ice water in my veins. I had felt those things for years now. I'd always attributed them to sleep paralysis, to the hallucinations that come with severe insomnia. I'd never told anyone about them. How did you know that? I whispered, my voice trembling. Because that's what keeps you awake. Not stress, not anxiety. Something doesn't want you to sleep, Mr. Wells. I'm offering you protection from it. I should have walked out then. I should have demanded an explanation, or better yet, found a real doctor. Instead, I wrote him a check. To my surprise, he accepted it despite saying cash only, and left with a small wooden box in my pocket, feeling its weight like a stone of dread. That night, I placed the stone on my nightstand as instructed. It looked harmless enough in the lamplight, just a smooth, dark stone. I felt ridiculous as I lay down, placed my hand on it, and said aloud, I invite you to guide me. Nothing happened at first. Then the stone grew warm beneath my palm, almost hot. The warmth spread up my arm, across my chest, behind my eyes. The ceiling above me seemed to ripple like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. And then, for the first time in years, I fell deeply, completely asleep. I woke the next morning feeling reborn. 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. No nightmares, no waking in panic, no tossing and turning, just peaceful darkness and then morning. I was elated. Whatever Dr. Emerson's methods, they worked. I noticed something odd as I was getting dressed. My shadow on the wall seemed slightly out of sync with my movements, a split second delayed. I remembered Dr. Emerson's warning and quickly looked away, but not before I saw something else. My shadow's hand held something, a small dark shape that I couldn't identify. That night, I repeated the ritual, eager for another perfect night's sleep. I invite you to guide me, I said, hand on the stone. The same warmth, the same rippling effect, and then darkness. I dreamed that night, though. I was walking through a vast, empty house. Each room was identical. Bare walls, bare floors, a single window showing a gray sky. In each room, a shadow stretched across the floor, but I could never see what cast it. The shadow moved independently, flowing from room to room ahead of me. I followed, drawn forward by something I couldn't name. In the final room, the shadow stopped and turned toward me. It raised a hand, and in it was the stone, or something that looked like it. The shadow seemed to offer it to me. I reached out and woke with a gasp. Sunlight streamed through my windows. Another full night's sleep despite the strange dream. I felt rested, alert, better than I had in years. But something felt wrong.
But as I moved around my apartment that morning, I kept catching glimpses of my shadow in my peripheral vision. It seemed darker than it should be, more defined. And sometimes, when I turned quickly, it seemed to be in the wrong position, not quite matching my movements. I called Dr. Emerson's office, but the line was disconnected. I drove to the Victorian house only to find it empty, with a for lease sign in the yard. The neighbor said it had been vacant for months. That night I hesitated before using the stone, but the memory of restful sleep was too powerful to resist. I invite you to guide me, I said, and fell immediately into darkness. The dream picked up where it had left off. The shadow was still offering me the stone. This time I took it. The moment I touched it, the shadow lunged forward, wrapping around me like smoke. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I felt myself being pulled down through the floor into absolute darkness. I woke thrashing, covered in sweat. But I had slept through the night again. The stone sat innocently on my nightstand, cool to the touch. Throughout the day, my shadow's behavior became more concerning. It would stretch toward dark corners of the room, reaching out in ways that my body wasn't moving. Once, while cooking dinner, I saw it raise a hand to its face, as if whispering a secret, while both my hands were occupied with chopping vegetables. I considered getting rid of the stone, but Dr. Emerson's warning echoed in my mind. Once you begin treatment, you must see it through to completion. What was the completion? He hadn't said. And the thought of returning to my sleepless existence was unbearable. That night I decided to test something. Instead of placing the stone on my nightstand, I locked it in a drawer in the kitchen, far from my bedroom. I lay down, expecting to toss and turn as usual. I felt the familiar weight on my chest almost immediately. The presence in the corner of the room seemed stronger than ever. But now there was something new. A soft scratching sound, like fingernails on wood, coming from the direction of the kitchen. It continued for hours, a gentle, persistent scratching. Around 3 a.m., I heard the drawer open. Footsteps approached my bedroom, slow and deliberate. But there was something wrong with the rhythm, as if the walker was dragging one leg. I lay frozen, eyes squeezed shut, as the footsteps entered my room and stopped beside my bed. Something cold touched my hand, pressed something smooth and round to my palm. The stone. "Invite me," whispered a voice like dry leaves scraping concrete. My eyes flew open. The room was empty, but the stone was in my hand, and on the wall, my shadow sat upright in bed, though I was still lying down. It turned its head toward me, waiting. With shaking lips, I said, "I invite you to guide me." Sleep took me instantly, but it wasn't the peaceful oblivion of previous nights. I dreamed I was in my own apartment, but everything was wrong. Furniture in the wrong places, doors that opened to brick walls, windows that showed impossible landscapes. And everywhere I went, my shadow preceded me, always just around the corner, always just out of sight. In the kitchen, I found an old leather-bound book open on the counter, though I owned no such book. The pages were covered in cramped, spidery writing and crude illustrations of stone identical to mine. I began to read and learned the terrible, terrible truth. The Umbra stone wasn't guiding me to sleep. It was guiding something else to me. Each night my invitation allowed it to take a little more of my shadow, a little more of my essence. In exchange, it gave me sleep, the sleep of someone being slowly hollowed out. The final page showed a person crouched in a corner, their shadow standing over them, fully separated and solid. The caption read, "When the shadow no longer needs the host." I jerked awake with the book's warning burning in my mind. Morning light filled the room, but it brought no comfort, because stretching across my wall was my shadow, and it was moving on its own, pacing back and forth while I lay completely still. I threw myself out of bed and ran to the bathroom, avoiding looking at any shadows. I splashed water on my face, trying to clear my head, to convince myself it was just another dream. When I looked up at the mirror, my reflection smiled at me with a mouth full of too many teeth. I stumbled backward, fell against the shower curtain, pulled it down with me. When I scrambled up, the mirror showed only my normal reflection, pale and terrified. I had to get all right at the stone. Whatever Dr. Emerson had given me, it wasn't helping me. It was feeding on me. I grabbed the stone from my nightstand and drove to the lake at the edge of town. My shadow stretched out beside the car as I drove, but it kept turning its head to look at me, an impossible movement that made my stomach lurch. At the lake, I stood at the end of a small pier, the stone heavy in my hand. My shadow stretched out across the water, though the sun was directly overhead. It should have been pooled around my feet. "This ends now," I said, and threw the stone as far as I could. It splashed into the deep water and disappeared. My shadow didn't move. It remained stretched across the water's surface, a dark stain that rippled with the gentle waves. As I watched, it began to pull back toward me, condensing, thickening. I ran. Back to my car. Back to my apartment. I packed a bag, determined to drive anywhere just to get away. But as I was throwing clothes into a suitcase, I felt something in my pocket. Something round and smooth. The stone. I pulled it out,
staring in disbelief. I'd thrown it in the lake. I'd watched it sink, take it by force. It lunged at me. I dove aside, scrambling for the door, but my own shadow betrayed me, wrapping around my ankles, tripping me. I fell hard, my head striking the corner of the coffee table. As consciousness faded, I saw Dr. Emerson standing in my doorway, the woman in black behind him. "I told you there would be consequences," he said softly. "No refunds, no early terminations. The contract must be fulfilled." He knelt beside me, placed something in my hand. A new stone. This one white as bone. "But I'm not unreasonable," he continued. "This one works differently. No shadows involved. Instead, it uses dreams. Your dreams, to be precise. All of them. You'll never dream again, but you'll sleep. Isn't that what you wanted?" I tried to refuse, to throw the white stone away, but my body wouldn't respond. The shadow thing watched from the corner, patient now, knowing. "Invite it, Doctor," Emerson instructed. "Quickly, before the other one decides to take more than just your shadow." With the last of my strength, I whispered, "I invite you to guide me." Sleep took me instantly, dreamlessly. When I woke, Dr. Emerson was gone. The shadow thing was gone. The white stone sat on my nightstand, innocent and still, and I felt rested better than ever. But I no longer have a shadow. Not one that I could see, anyway. Light falls on me and around me, but casts no darkness. People don't seem to notice, or if they do, they quickly look away, discomforted on a level they can't quite articulate. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I catch glimpses of a familiar silhouette, moving independently through the world, growing stronger, learning, waiting. In Dr. Emerson's clinic, it's still operating. Different name, different location, but the same doctor, the same treatments. I've seen the ads online, in forums where desperate insomniacs gather. I've tried to post warnings, but they're always deleted within minutes. I still sleep perfectly. 8 dreamless hours every night. Sometimes I wake with dirt under my fingernails, or blood that isn't mine. And recently I've begun to find stones, small black ones, smooth as glass, lined up on my windowsill each morning. A reminder, perhaps, or an invitation, because the shadow needs a guide too, now that it walks alone. And I have a terrible feeling that soon, very soon, it's going to find its way back to me. Not as my shadow, but as something far worse. I know what Dr. Emerson is now. I know what he takes from people, piece by piece, treatment by treatment. Sleep is just the beginning of what he trades in. So if you're reading this and you can't sleep, and you find yourself drawn to a small clinic that promises relief when all else has failed, walk away. Some prices are too high, even for a good night's rest. And if you see my shadow, moving on its own through dark places, stay far away from it. It knows things now. Things it learned from me. Things no shadow should ever know. And it's still hungry.